Good morning, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome to the Daily Medicine Transmission. This is April 27th, 2022. Welcome back, everyone. If you are new here, this is your first time here, thank you for being here. And thank you for your comments and your input, even if they are in disagreement with what I have transmitted. I still welcome a diversity of opinion, a diversity of thought. It is in a dialogue that is honest and truthful that we actually are going to learn from each other and grow. So I certainly don't put up with personal attacks on any level, but certainly disagreements. So one of yesterday's transmission on BitChute, somebody had taken the time to really stand in opposition to what I had to say, mostly because of the alternative interpretation of a biblical story. And when you start pushing on or offering resistance in some ways to people's belief systems, they tend to want to respond. And I think that that's a good thing. It's in our conversations, it's in our interaction and our respect and compassion for each other that truth will be revealed. So I do welcome the dialogue and even the debate in some ways, right? Because it's in the polarization of even ideas that something new is able to grow. And isn't that what we've been talking about this whole time? So thank you for commenting, even if you don't agree, even if you think I'm going to hell. That's fine. Because I'm good with God, right? It's between me, myself, and God, and I appreciate your concern, but I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. Anyway, so that's a long way from where I may have responded in the past, right? Of getting very triggered. So this is a good thing. We need to all get to this point, right? I mean, if our belief system is so fragile that somebody's opinion is able to shake us out of, a sense of balance and connection to source, then maybe it's time to really evaluate what that's all about and where we're at. So, and where are we, right? We are in an interesting time right now. The moon is still moved through Pisces last night into this morning. And how were your dreams? Wow. The moon meeting Neptune in Pisces like this. I mean, I went to some places that are so deep and unfamiliar, seemingly unfamiliar, that I'm not even sure what was going on. But people are reporting intense dreams, of course, with a moon in Pisces like this, meeting Neptune. It's very, there's a lot of layers, right? Definitely multidimensional experiences that are easily accessed through the dream state, and the ability to have a different dimensional experience with reality comes in our dreams. It's probably the one of the most the easiest in terms of accessing this realm, because of the conscious mind actually going into sleep mode, quite literally. So how have your dreams been? Are you finding that lots is seeping into your own subconscious that may be from past experiences, ancestral karma, multidimensional, whatever, right? This is part of what comes through with the moon in Pisces meeting Neptune. But I think the big news for today, astrologically, is that Venus and Neptune will be conjunct. You can see in this photograph here, this is linked in the description box below, actually, that access to this photography. I do believe this is Italy. Pre-dawn is going to provide a beautiful look at this alignment, but especially Jupiter and Venus coming together into a conjunction on the 30th, which is our new moon in Taurus. It's going to be a partial solar eclipse, which means that eclipse season is turning over now. Speaking of which, just to get the admin stuff out of the way, right? So we can get into the meat of things. I just want to present here the flyer for my next reading sale, Cultivation. This is the essence of our new moon and of the next eclipse season. Right, that the cultivation is about nourishing and taking care of that which we want to cultivate, right? We have to be part of the process. So this particular reading sale is individual astrological forecast that is factoring in your natal chart, the transits, your secondary progressions, your starseed markings, if you have them, all into one forecast for the next 6 months. So it's $99. This is a 90-minute recording. I am going to be offering other things that are at different different price points to match some budgets, but it's very difficult to do any less than 90 minutes with this type of content. So I'm putting it out there. It's going to be posted on Telegram. It's going to go out to the email list. If you're interested in either of those things, those are both linked in the description box below how to access them. So this flyer will be going out. I haven't had a cutoff period. I think I'm going to keep it open in terms of the sale until the end of the lunar cycle. So into, through May, you'll have the opportunity to book this at this particular rate. So with that out of the way, let's get into it, right? Of today's transmission, what's going on. So, like I said, Venus and Neptune coming together in Pisces, the moon transiting Pisces all evening, meeting all of the Pisces planets right now, right? Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, and Mars, right? Mars is even in Pisces now too. So the themes of Pisces are very watery and dreamy and fantasy oriented, and compassion, forgiveness, unity consciousness, returning to source or God, right? The field that represents the unified consciousness that we all come from, right? So there is the boundaries are very loose. I mean, Neptune is the universal solvent in a lot of ways. So Venus meeting Neptune in Pisces allows for those boundaries to be dissolved even more. And remember, Venus rules Taurus, rules Libra. Both of these signs are related to a material reality or a physicality that is either just experienced in its isness or is balanced out in social contract with Libra. So to have full dissolution, right, of boundaries, to have those physical material senses be much more engaged with the realm of the spirit, realm of the soul, the realm of emotion and feeling, is something that Venus is very comfortable with, I would say, but and opens the doorway to some considerable beautiful relational connections right now. But the other aspect about this to keep in mind is that we can also find ourselves getting kind of caught up in the fantasy, kind of like really daydreamy, not very realistic about what's happening around us, and caught up in the illusion or the delusion, because Pisces is very much about this as well. So it really depends on where you are, how you're looking at things, but I do sense here that the purge and the catharsis that Neptune is holding space or creating truly through its solvent nature is going to reach us in a very palpable way with this conjunction by the end of today. Now, the moon will have moved into Aries by this point and will actually be at 2 degrees Aries. So a sense of humor, a sense of objective clarity, a sense of the human nature being revealed to us, or to us internally, or an experience that we feel. It's just going to be important to keep a sense of humor. And I know that seems crazy right now in some ways, and will continue to seem kind of unrealistic as we move through the week and start this eclipse season. But I feel like that it's the mirror, right? If we can find that mirror within ourselves to be able to have this human nature reflected back to ourselves in our own emotions, our own subconscious, our own sense of feeling, I think that this is going to really help us manage what otherwise is a massive type of purging position for Neptune, right? Complete catharsis, and purging out every perversion of the soul, basically. So let's get into the space weather. Let's start there, because I think that this is very much related to what is happening on the ground, so to speak, with us. So when we we'll come over here first to the Schumann Resonance. So one thing I want to point out here is that the site that I usually use was not updated for, current. So I went over to Tomsk, and this is the Space Observing System. This is in Russia, and I get a sense here, I'm pretty sure that this is the source, right? That every other Schumann resonance graph or site or app or whatever is getting their data from Tomsk. So you can go right to the source if you want and get this information. So it's actually linked in the description box to get to this site. So you can look at amplification, you can look at the frequency, and you can look at the quality factors as well. So we're looking at amplitude right now, as you can see. Now remember, this is universal time plus 7 hours. And so this is 1400. This is Russia, right? So 7 hours, so 2 p.m. You're looking at almost a 12, 11, I'd say 11-hour difference. And so you're looking overnight, again, at least on the East Coast in the United States, but also very early in the morning on the other side of the pond. And you can see that there was another amplification that seemed to be much more than previous. So there's been a consistent rhythm here of amplification, and it just got stronger again. So are we are we awaiting some more solar weather and activity? I would imagine so, despite the fact that all of these sunspots, they are flaring. There's a lot of activity on the sun, but it's not large enough to really expel anything. But something is leading the Schumann to amplify again. So you can see up to 24. So we'll go over to the spaceweather.com and kind of get a sense here of what has been happening and what is going on the sun, because I do get, again, this appears right now to be a moment of, I wouldn't say stasis, but an opportunity to go very deep within ourselves and to be aware of the space in which we are, accepting the revelation, to be able to see the revelation, and certainly for our own benefit, but in a lot of ways to be able to anticipate what is coming. And the sun is still activating Draco right now, and it's moved past briefly its activation of Andromeda. This will come back. In fact, the eclipse is going to be in conjunction with a star in the Andromeda constellation, the first eclipse. So there's a big Andromeda activation that's going along with this eclipse cycle, not to mention the Pleiades. So let's see here. We're going to, there we go. All right, friends, so you can see that the solar wind, 476 kilometers per second, it's starting to increase again. You can see the flares everywhere, right? They're in front of us, right? These flares are what are facing us in terms of the sun in its rotation. So there's some coming into view, there's some coming out of view. There is a chance of minor geomagnetic storms leading into the weekend, so Friday into Saturday. The coronal hole stream is meant to get here. And we also know that this is like the balsamic moon. This is when Pluto stations retrograde. This is when Mercury moves into Gemini. This is when the eclipse happens. And this is when Venus and Jupiter come into conjunction. So in fact, you can just see how this is the same photography, except it's got everything marked here. And so again, you can go to the link in the description box to see it. So as we move, I'm going to spare you all of the ads on spaceweather.com right now. One thing I do want to show you, though, that is really interesting, if you want to see the sun flaring, is this is a red-hot tornado, 10 times taller than our entire planet. And so here it is. So we know that the sun, we are coming into solar, we are in solar cycle 25, coming into solar maximum. So the sun is very, very active. It's just a matter of when we're going to be interfacing with anything that's coming off the sun and coming towards us. So cosmic rays are an important part of this conversation today, and I'll bring up just a reminder. Cosmic rays entering the Earth's atmosphere, when we come into solar maximum, it decreases. And that's because when there is increased solar wind, plasma, coronal mass ejections, flaring. The planet and the electromagnetic field of the planet, the magnetosphere, bolsters itself and boosts itself and has an impact on the number of cosmic rays that are reaching us, right? So we know that they're going down, but the KP index, as we're going to see, has been very low in the just pretty much the whole week so far, and that really suggests that cosmic rays are impacting us even more during this time. So one of the things too, I just want to show here, right? So we see that the KP index really, really quiet. And when the KP index, when the magnetosphere is very, very calm like this, we have the potential for an increase in cosmic rays. And we talked about cosmic rays. It's not actually light. Light has no mass, right? Photons have no mass according to physics currently, but cosmic rays do, because it's matter and charged particles moving near the speed of light. And so they have an impact on us and biological life in general. But what I want to share with you, and we have a coronal hole stream. And so again, they're identifying that it'll reach Earth around the 30th. So the 29th, the 30th, we know the weekend leading up into the eclipse, leading up to Pluto stationing retrograde, there's likely to be an increase in solar activity. I'm really actually surprised how much there isn't massive flaring towards us, but it's very interesting. I think it's going to be happening soon. So spaceweather.com. Now, when we look at spaceweathernews.com, right, and we see here, again, it's just to show ourselves, right, that it was pretty minimal and pretty stable in the magnetosphere, and it's starting to increase again, right, that we're starting to get, we've gotten some solar wind from a coronal hole stream that is now going out of view, that had already sent us our way. So it's a little bit of reverberation, it's a little bit of impact, but not nearly as strong as it could be, but there is that other coronal hole. So there's something called a co-interacting or rotating region. I'm still learning about this, but I think it has a lot to do with slower solar wind meeting more speedy solar wind and having a geomagnetic effect. So again, more geomagnetic effect possibly coming our way with all of the flaring, with the coronal hole and things like that. But the thing about the cosmic rays that I want to bring up, and then we will move on to the astrology for today, is this paper that was presented actually on suspiciousobservers.com. So I'm going to link to today's video in the description box so you can get the full rundown from the professionals. But one thing I want to show you here, and I'm going to post this paper on Telegram as well, because I think it's really important to see that there are people who have been doing this work for a long time and have been branded as crazy or, not very good at what they're doing in their scientific field that is coming to pass as actually accurate. Science takes a long time, like real good science, because it's a methodology and it requires that you create your hypothesis, then you experiment based on, what you're trying to find. It has to be the right hypothesis. No hypothesis is worth shit unless you can nullify it, right? That is part of what the scientific method requires. And then you bring in you collect your experimental data, you analyze it, you come to conclusions, you look at where there are issues with your methodology. Peer review is meant to actually point out these things for the scientific community and to be supportive of each other. Anyway, what I want to share here, I digress, right, is what they have found in this paper is saying that secondary cosmic ray detection, they're being very careful here in their wording, is saying that are periodically correlated, right? Correlation does not equal causation. Correlation shows that there is some sort of connection or a parallel to these two sets of data. Causation is, this causes this. correlation with future global earthquake magnitude sum. Basically, what they're saying is that they are finding that secondary cosmic ray detection and seismic effects are actually correlated with each other. So we know we're getting increased cosmic rays right this moment. So let's see what happens within the next week or so as this is the case. Will there actually be an uptick in seismic activity? We saw that big one also in Nicaragua last week, like almost a 7 magnitude, and that had to do with coronal holes. So let's see, because there may be a perfect storm here brewing. But this is part of science and research, right? Is to just observe in a lot of ways before you come to conclusions. And it's very easy to come to conclusions when what you are observing has been curated for you, which is why critical analysis and scientific literacy are those things in themselves are so important, and there's a reason they've been pretty much stricken from public education, right? It's more important to just fall in line with what you are being told rather than to think for yourselves. And we know that. That's not exactly, newsflash to us here, but also to show that there are people embedded in the scientific communities and professional researchers that are doing the research and then publishing it. So I think this is a good sign. Not that it's a good sign that there may be increased seismic activity, but we also know how much this eclipse cycle is related to Antarctica, right? The path of totality of the last total solar eclipse was right over Antarctica. And in fact, the partial solar eclipse that's on the 30th, it's actually in between Antarctica. The path of totality covers Antarctica and Chile, right? Southern South America. It's going to be really interesting. Very, very interesting what unfolds as a result of that, and what types of events or what types of disclosures will present themselves as this past eclipse season starts to come to a close and a resolution. So I thought that was interesting in and of itself. So it's good to know what is happening in terms of this cosmic and space weather, because it impacts all of us, right? And it impacts all manner of life, all the way from the micro to the macro. So understanding this and having some sort of literacy around it is really important. So, alrighty, let's get into the astrology for today, shall we? And I'm getting a little bit better here about how I can, there we go, be a lot more streamlined with my imagery here. So here is our chart for today, my friends, the 27th of April. So our first transit over in the evening, late last night, very early this morning, depending on where you were, was the moon came into the conjunction with Venus. So this is, we talked about this yesterday, especially in terms of our dharma, right? Getting a sense of what is our purpose and centralizing our focus towards that purpose or that dharma. And it's very much with Venus and the moon. You were talking about the divine feminine, the sacred feminine in energetic archetypal form with the moon and our own subconscious, and Venus, the material representation, the incarnation of the divine feminine through our material existence, right? And how we can feel the changes in the world around us through our bodies, through our even through our emotions. And this moment here, whether you were awake, you were asleep, it was this conjunction here that allowed our emotional experience of our dharma, our centralization of focus, to have an incarnate experience with Venus as well. So this is just much more about getting into our own purpose and feeling into it and being sensitive to the changes around us that may implement this. There is a sense here that as Pluto is about to station retrograde, as we talked about before, then we're going to go into this empty, fallow period for a while. And it's in this space that we grow something new. And so we do have the capacity to rise in consciousness, but it does require that we simultaneously, again, accept where we've been and release it, and also have the maturity to know that we can always start something new. And just because one phase of life ends does not mean that it's all over. And this is where Mercury, I think, is going to offer some incredible perspective when it comes into a trine with Pluto tomorrow. Speaking of which, now these two are going to meet at this point several times over the next couple of months. If you got the How Can It Bloom reading for me, then you know that this is one of 3 passes that Mercury and Pluto will have with each other in a trine, an Earth trine at this degree, because they're both going to be stationing retrograde. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for us in our mind and in our cognition, in the way that our nervous system functions, ideas, communication, expression. Mercury is, rides the light beam, right? He is swift because he moves as quickly as light itself. And light is information, right? That is what happens. Light is a frequency. It travels in a wave as well as particles. We know this. So at least that's what we're being told so far. Who knows what we're going to discover down the road about our entire universe? There's only more to discover, right? But this is going to have multiple passes, and this is about the maturity here, that a mature understanding, right? The capacity to rise in consciousness and feelings above biological limitations. And when I say biological limitations, that can mean a lot of different things, but it does suggest here that we are equipped biologically to respond to all kinds of things in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to, make sure that we are in command and authority of our own lives. But when we rise in consciousness above this is where you start to see the transition from Taurus into Gemini. So we're still Mercury is very much activating the Pleiadian starseeds right now, big time, through the mind, through communication, expression, through light, right? Definitely through light. So this encourages us to open our mind to the possibility of new beginnings, which I think is where we really should start focusing now. It's very easy to get caught up. I'm not saying we shouldn't be in the moment. We absolutely should be present in order to know how to move forward, what choices to make, to be totally awake in this moment, in this now moment, in order to move forward, right? If we're still stuck in the past, especially a past that is going through a massive cathartic purge right now, we may not be able to freely open our minds. So Pleiadian starseeds in particular, wow, I can't tell you how many personal readings I've done for people where they have Chiron in conjunction with the Pleiades. Like, there is some serious wounding that the Pleiadians and the Pleiadian starseeds in particular seem to be addressing right now in terms of their role in the past and what their role is now in relation to us. And so a more mature response to the possibility of a new experience is really what is being offered to us in terms of our mind, in the way that we conceptualize the world around us through our consciousness. Because the power of the soul to intervene, I mean, this is Neptune and Pisces all day, and Venus in this conjunction by the end of today is the purging in a very like I said, a very palpable way, in a visceral way, something that relates to whatever it is that we value. And when it comes to Pisces, we're talking about the unity consciousness. We're talking about our own soul. We're talking about how to be compassionate and loving and forgiving, and to also be open to, a purging is needed to restore contact with the soul and our dharma. So there's a lot still in the way, and the more that you are actively engaging this process, the less, destructive it may be. I can't say that for sure. I think that it's going to be different for everybody, of course. So one thing I also want to bring up here is that Lilith now, this was very early this morning, but if we move through the day, Lilith is moving direct. She's going to conjunct Mintaka as well. And so there's going to be this another moment here of what has happened in, the Mintaka and water world, how that impacts people at a soul level, a karmic level, the Orion starseeds that have Mintaka in their chart. in particular. I mean, this kind of fits in some ways to the Pleiadian nature. I think that they can find some connection with each other because it seems to me that having the memory of your entire planet destroyed is enough to influence your behavior, even if you're not consciously aware of it at this level. So Lilith in particular, right? She is that primal need to survive, that primal self-preservation, the original feminine blueprint, right? The mitochondrial DNA at the root of all of our, the root of humanity as a divine species, right? That our original creator, allowed for us to be this beautiful living library in a lot of ways. And we know that, well, not all of us know, but many of us do, that when Barbara Marciniak started channeling the Pleiadians, I mean, they wrote a whole book about this, about Earth as the living library, right? That we have, all of these genetic strands that are embedded in our very nature, and it's through manipulation later down the line that we have been separated from this this divinity of our souls, right, in a material form. Anyway. Man, this is with Lilith here, right? This is something that is so deep and primal that, again, we find ourselves maybe expressing something, something erupting from underneath that maybe we don't even have any control over, that can come out in relation to this. So just be aware of these types of experiences coming to the surface. So we talked about Venus in a conjunction with the moon. Now, Mercury is actually in a sextile to Jupiter pretty much at the same time. So again, this is very early this morning or late last night, depending on where you are. Mercury in conjunction with the Pleiades. Now, this degree is one of those moments of echo in some ways, because this is the degree of the lunar eclipse that happened in November, 27 to 28 of Taurus and Scorpio, right? The sun was in Scorpio, but it was the moon in Taurus that was eclipsed at this degree. So Mercury here, this is very interesting that Mercury is here, allowing us to have a mental, cognitive, conscious connection to this dynamic or this particular symbol that was activated with the eclipse in November. So again, there seems to be this sense of like, oh, I see now. I can identify this in my mind and have a mature understanding of realizing that there's always the opportunity to begin something new, even when a cycle has completed itself. So there's a reason that the crone phase in ancient traditions, ancient cultures, had a place, especially in indigenous cultures, because of the elders, but the elder women, I mean, they really hold it down. And there's something very powerful about that phase of life where you're no longer able to. This is based on a conversation that I just had between yesterday and today with someone, especially based on everything we talked about with the woman at the well and the esoteric interpretation of that and the womb and the space in which to receive the revelation. I think we're receiving the revelation while at the same time going through massive soul purging in order to create the space. But we have to have the maturity to understand that. And that is something that has been, there's been a lot of resources dumped into keeping us from having that mature understanding and perspective, or to just be completely apathetic and complacent to it, or to think it's all is lost. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you could look at this without any maturity. So believe me, Pluto, by tomorrow, right, the 28th, when Mercury and Pluto come into that trine, as you can see, we will get the mature understanding, and it'll be based very much on the destructive qualities of Pluto still, in terms of, unearthing everything down to the hidden, the hidden signature of of the establishment, how it's held together by energetics, as opposed to the materium that we, for the most part, just assume that that's the case. So, and you can see this in a lot of different ways. It's going to be the fallow period, I think, with Pluto retrograde. That's going to be very difficult for us. So take advantage right now. If it seems quiet out there, there hasn't been a lot of conversation in our chat groups necessarily. I mean, there's been connection, but I can really feel all of us right now in this moment of just like really contemplating, going very deep within, finding stillness, feeling into our own soul's journey right now, in order to be open to this mature perspective that is, I think, really necessary right now. And the Pleiadian starseeds are a big part of this, because it is through you and I and us being Pleiadian starseeds that we have the opportunity to, rectify this karmic cycle that they really are here to address, right? To not just take off when shit hits the fan, like it happened in Atlantis, right? To be like, oh, no, I'm out. You know what I mean? That's not we all have to be on board now, right? There's no savior. We are our own savior. And I think that the return of the Christ and the wrapping up of the age of Pisces is very much this, right? That this is us coming to realize we are all, children of God, and our soul is all a piece of our Creator, and what that can actually do for all of us, and how we can express this compassion and this sense of love for each other unconditionally. And that's very difficult when you have to face your own enemies, right? And the idea of Jesus exoterically is meant to show that he took the ultimate sacrifice, which was he took his own life, essentially. I mean, not by suicide, but he stood in the face of judgment from man and was like, I only face the judgment of God. And so do what thou wilt, right? That's interesting, considering that is a big part of what Crowley and Thelema, right? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And yes, because karma is very real. So if you do what thou wilt, right? If you follow your will, and you will be subjected to the karma of that situation. So he wasn't wrong. He just neglected to mention all of the impact of if you are following your will and it is negatively slanted in some way, that's what you're going to get. So there's just, there's so much happening right now. So let's just wrap this up for today, really, because it's just this moment of stasis here, and a sense of really going within. Now, when the moon comes into Aries by the end of today, as we're going to see, or into today, I feel like it's going to start activating all of that potent life force, that feeling of desire and wanting to, release that power in some way, right? Aries is the lamb, but Aries is also the ram. Aries is that Emperor reversed from the Starseed Ministry reading on Monday, right? So we know too that is coming, right? That the structure and of the establishment is to be destroyed, and that's not anything new either. So as we move through, like I said, Mercury sextile Jupiter. This is, where Jupiter is, this is about abundance, right? Everything we need is provided for us, and Jupiter is expansive. Jupiter is an advocate. Jupiter is good fortune and larger than life. And so the abundance is not so much abundance for everyone, although it is, but it's an abundance that's tailored to each individual's need. Everything you need is here. And in fact, Jupiter is making it that much bigger and obvious. Like, it's all here for us. And Mercury sextile is about the mature understanding, right? When you have these two in a sextile with each other, think about the abundance that is amplified even more when we have a mental and cognitive and consciousness-oriented maturity. That it's in the release of what is over and the acceptance of what is coming that allows for this abundance. This is pretty incredible, considering that it feels like, whoa, what is going on and what's happening? Now, there are a lot of things out there that may signal to us that there is something happening, that we are quote unquote winning, whatever that even means. And so, take that in for what it is. But, I would advise not to get too caught up in those images and what is presented to us as opposed to what is happening within yourself, because that's going to be the best barometer for anything in your own journey. The moon will meet Neptune. The moon's going to meet, this is all last night. Moon meets Jupiter. The moon sextile to Mercury. But the thing that I think is really interesting, right? So the moon is just giving us all this individual, direct emotional connection to Jupiter, to Neptune, and that sextile to Mercury as well. But what is very interesting to me is that the moon will come into a sextile with Pluto before she leaves, right? Before she leaves the realm of Pisces. So let's go back here just a little bit so that we can look at the sextile to Pluto. You can see it right here. Boom. And then sextile. So you see kind of like, this top, it looks like a roof, right? That's over top of something, with the point of it being all this Pisces energy hovering around the last decan of Pisces, right? It is Mars, the 10 of Cups is Mars in the last decan of Pisces. So, which is being satiated, right? Being overflowing, your cup overfloweth. And so the overflowing of this cup, I feel like, has a place to invest into, which is these earth energies of Mercury in Taurus, Pluto in Capricorn, both of them in activating positions for the Pleiades, right? These galactic degrees. And so the moon in these last degrees of Pisces in a sextile in particular to Pluto, just almost, and we're getting into balsamic moon time now, right? I mean, the moon is getting darker and darker and darker, so things aren't as obvious either. So if you feel like that the dream imagery is very intense and visceral and seems very real, but it's not very clear to you, I would say a lot of it has to do with the moon being in its balsamic phase. Another reason to, take that moment of stillness. Not a great time to necessarily make a ton of decisions or take action necessarily. But this sextile with Pluto is like when our own soul and our own spirit and our own sense of inner landscape, if we are able to be like a prism, right? Where the light shines through the prism and then is comes out the other side as the rainbow, to remember that it's just the differentiation by way of vibration and frequency of something that is a whole, which is the visible light spectrum. It's only going through this prism that you're able to see all of the iterations, all of the frequency bandwidths that are part of this larger whole, which is light, right? Visible light. And so as Pluto is pulling away all of the layers, layer after layer, pulling it away, so that we are interfacing with the very, the occult nature of the establishment. And I don't say that necessarily as literally as much as, in terms of the practices and the black magic and all of that stuff, but just hidden, right? What is hidden? What is under the surface here that can only be usually interpreted, I should say, by those who have the capacity to do so, which soon is going to be all of us, right? That's part of moving into fourth and then fifth densities, that these types of modalities will be, and I've talked about this many times, they will be, they won't really be necessary. They will be out of date at that point, because we will all be just connected into this manifestation process instantaneously. And we won't need a mediation through readers and astrology and other things like that when this happens. So, and you can already tell that that's happening, right? How many, a lot of people have moved away in a lot of ways from consistent need for other people to read and interpret for them. And that's what I'm here to do, is to facilitate people waking up for themselves and doing this work for themselves. I'm happy to offer my skill set in this transition process, though. when we allow for this differentiation within ourselves, we see that we each have our own pathway. And I was looking through notes from yesterday I was looking through old notes over the last 2 years, just random things I'd write down. I went through that book. And one of the things I wrote down years ago was just that, the different spectrums of light, right? The different frequency of light and color, right? From across the rainbow. It really does represent in a lot of ways that people are operating at different frequencies. They're still part of the same source, right? But they're operating at a different frequency, which gives them a different color, a different hue. And I do get the sense here with this moon in Pisces, after it's passed all of Venus and Neptune and Jupiter and comes into this sextile with Pluto, that is really about that, right? Where we identify what is our frequency, and differentiating and kind of branching off into our own particular pathway, right? Based on what has been pulled away as a result of Pluto, right? When you see everything for truly what it is at the essence of the establishment, it does in some ways trigger people to get honest with themselves. And I would say in this case, this is really about what is your frequency, and to accept that everybody's frequency is different, and that's all part of the rainbow that we see, because that's the link between us and our higher self. So I'm curious to see how this unfolds. This is something that already happened this morning, right? This is something, as I'm recording, is already happening. So most of this stuff already happened last night. Like I said, the big thing here is that the moon will move into Aries this afternoon, and at that time is when Venus and Venus and Neptune come into a direct conjunction, and so a sense of humor is going to be essential during this time, right? It is the comedian, and this is the second degree of Aries. It is the comedian that provides the mirror, right? Reveals human nature through their craft, right? And it's about having that objective view of humanity through the lens of humor, being able to look at it objectively. And the comedian's role is actually really important, because they're able to present this mirror through their craft, through their art, through their jokes, right? Through their comedy, in a way that actually holds that mirror up to us. But we don't, we laugh, right? We laugh instead of, cry or get angry or upset. And so whatever you can do to find that humor within yourself, to find that objective position within yourself when this Venus Neptune conjunction is exact, I think is going to be really important. So the moon will move through Aries through the rest of this afternoon into this evening. And tomorrow, what are we going to look at here? Like I said, tomorrow, let's look at 12 hours from now. Tomorrow, the moon will meet Chiron. That's going to be happening. You can see that Lilith will be in a square to Neptune and to Venus. So again, there's that Mintakan type of energy coming back around to be challenged, right? This Orion nature also that is being challenged with this square to Venus and Neptune. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. And you can see here that Saturn is also in a trine to Lilith. So there's a lot to talk about with Black Moon Lilith tomorrow in these Orion positions. So if you are trying to preserve yourself, or you are in survival mode, that this can very much be activated by all of these transits. The big one is, like I said, Mercury and Pluto in a trine exactly tomorrow. The moon and the sun looks like they'll be in an exact sextile or semi-sextile, right? 30-degree angle. Definitely strong, but not the full picture when it comes to this. And yeah, throughout the day, the moon is just going to move through Aries. And so, be prepared for some, very much be prepared for how do I say this? I would say just, you know how it is with the moon in Aries, or maybe you don't, right? There's a lot of tempers that flare. There's hot emotions, right? There's expulsions and explosions. And with Chiron involved, I mean, there is again, there is that wounded healer aspect, that old identity that gets heaped upon us that what we think is the only identity we can have, that is going to be activated again. And 13 to 14 degrees of Aries is very much coming into Andromedan territory as well. So remember that the Andromedans are fifth density humans, right? They are what we would be without the interference in the first place, right? In terms of our consciousness and technological and our spiritual nature. So the natural capacity for growth, for life is embedded in us, but there has been this overlay of shame and guilt that continues to be put upon us. And so this is something we're going to start working with moving forward. So my friends, I am going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in the cultivation reading, if you are interested in any other services, you can go to my website that is linked in the description box below, and you can get all the information that you need about what Catalyst Energies has to offer with the Starseed Fellowship, and those who are getting access to the subscriber content for the next month. That stuff is coming out very soon. It's going to be the new moon report, which is also the partial solar eclipse. So, and you'll be able to access those singular videos on Brighteon for a small price if you're not interested in subscribing, but the subscribers are going to get all of this content throughout, just throughout. So it's something to consider as well. And you get to join the Starseed Fellowship and be part of our Zoom chat every other week, which has been incredible. And I am looking forward to our next one, which will be next week. So I love you guys. Have a great day. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other the best you can. And I'll see you tomorrow.